I don't even like people knowing where I live, is what I always say when someone offers to drop me off at home. That's just the kind of person I am. Quiet, private, paranoid if we're being honest. My name's Ivy Thomas, and I'm a second-year computer science major at a university in Ashwood, a small but rapidly growing college town in Oregon. 2 weeks ago, I agreed to something I probably never would have considered under normal circumstances: house-sitting for a stranger. It was my dad's idea. He works maintenance for the city and had a coworker named Rick Latham, mid-50s, balding, the kind of guy who always smells like too much cologne and drives a spotless white Tacoma. Rick was flying to Utah for a weekend hunting trip and needed someone to watch his house for a few days. Normally, he'd have his niece stay over, but she was in the hospital for an appendectomy, and he was desperate. I told him, "You're great with tech," my dad said casually as we sat at the kitchen table eating pizza one Wednesday evening. "He's got a fancy security setup, camera in every room, even outside. Just needs someone to keep an eye on things. He said he'd pay you $200. I laughed. "Dad, I'm a programmer, not a security guard." "Yeah, but you know how to use computers," he said. "That's all it is. Sit in a room, watch the monitors. He even has a desk set up like a little control center upstairs. You'll be in and out just 2 days." I don't know why I agreed. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just wanted a break from my usual dorm routine. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't as afraid of being alone as I thought I was. The house was on Birch Lane, a quiet residential street about 15 minutes from campus. It was a 2-story craftsman-style home with navy blue siding and white trim, and it looked normal enough, if not a little too normal. You know the type. Flower pots perfectly aligned on the porch, wind chimes barely swaying in the breeze, a doormat that read, "Welcome, friends." Rick met us outside. My dad introduced us quickly and then left. He had to get to work. That left me standing awkwardly in the driveway with a man I'd known for maybe 2 minutes. "Come on in," Rick said, unlocking the front door. "Don't worry, it's a breeze. You'll hardly have to do anything." The interior was clean but cold, like nobody really lived there. No personal photos, no clutter. It was like walking into an Airbnb that hadn't been used in a while. The air even had that faint hotel smell, like lemon cleaner and dust. "Up here," Rick said, leading me up the stairs to a room on the far end of the hallway. It had a wide desk against one wall with a large flat-screen monitor hooked up to a multi-input security system. There was a camera in every room: kitchen, living room, all 3 bedrooms, hallway, garage, even the backyard. "You can just hang out in here mostly," he said. "Watch TV, do your schoolwork, whatever you want. The system records 24/7, but I just like having someone in the house in case something happens. You don't have to walk around or check rooms or anything. If something looks weird, just give me a call." "Got it," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Oh, and don't worry about sleeping arrangements. The guest room downstairs is all yours." He showed me around quickly: kitchen, bathroom, emergency numbers on the fridge. Then he was off, suitcase in hand. He waved as he backed out of the driveway, and then I was alone. The first several hours were uneventful. I made myself a microwave dinner, set up my laptop on the desk, and worked on a class project while keeping the monitor in my periphery. The whole thing felt more like babysitting a computer system than a house. The cameras cycled every 10 seconds between static and dull movement, blowing curtains, creaky walls, light shifting across the floor as the sun went down. By 11 p.m., I had brushed my teeth, changed into sweatpants, and returned to the monitor room, planning to watch some YouTube videos before heading down to the guest room. That's when I noticed it. The back screen door, leading from the kitchen to the backyard, was open. I stared at the camera feed. It hadn't been open earlier. I was sure of it. In fact, I remembered locking the kitchen door after dinner, but now the door was slightly ajar, and the curtain behind it fluttered like someone had just passed through. My heart started racing. I toggled through the other camera feeds quickly. Living room, normal. Garage, empty. Dining room, unchanged. Guest room, light still on, hallway, quiet. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. The hallway closet door was open. I knew it hadn't been before. I leaned forward, squinting at the grainy footage. A tall shape moved ever so slightly in the darkness of the closet. I couldn't make out details, just a vertical shadow, barely shifting, but unmistakably human. I sat frozen. My mouth went dry. My fingers hovered above my phone. Then reflexively I texted my dad. "Someone's in the house." His reply came about 30 seconds later. "What? Rick came back early?" Number I locked the door. "It's not him. Please call him and ask." While I waited for his reply, I kept my eyes glued to the hallway feed. The shape emerged. It stepped out slowly, and I could finally make out its outline against the dim light. Tall, lanky, wearing dark clothes. Face unreadable. It didn't look around, just stood there for a long time. Then, almost imperceptibly, it turned and looked up, straight at the ceiling, at me. That's when my elbow knocked a stapler off the desk. It hit the hardwood floor with a loud thud. On the monitor, the figure snapped its head upward at the sound and started walking, step by step, up the stairs. Panic took hold. I texted my dad again. "Call the cops. Now." I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the feet of the hallway until I realized I could hear the footsteps, right outside the door. Then, knock. Just one, then another. I looked at the monitor. The intruder was standing right outside the room I was in. I looked at the door. No lock. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. The only thing I could think to do, the only thing, was the window. I grabbed my bag and my phone, shoved the window open with both hands, and without thinking further, I jumped. The bushes below broke my fall but scratched me up pretty bad. I didn't stop to assess anything. I ran, fast, barefoot, halfway down the street. That's when my dad called. "Ivy, where are you? Rick says no one has a key. He's calling the cops now." I doubled over, panting, and screamed into the phone. "Tell him to look at the camera feeds. There's someone in the house." The police arrived 10 minutes later. I had already circled back with a neighbor who let me sit on their porch until the cruisers came. They didn't find anyone inside. But they did find the back door's glass shattered. Someone had broken in from the yard, exactly like the footage showed. I stayed to review the recording. It showed everything. The man breaking the glass, sneaking into the kitchen, hiding in the closet for over an hour. Then the moment I noticed. The moment he came upstairs. The knock. The jump. And the man running away just moments after I left. His face was never visible enough. He wore a hood and gloves. The cops couldn't identify him. Just another ghost slipping through the cracks of suburban life. It's been 2 weeks. I haven't told many people. My dad thinks I should go to therapy. Maybe I will. I haven't slept more than 3 hours in a row since that night. Every sound in the hallway, every knock from the pipes makes my stomach lurch. But worst of all, I still see it. That exact moment on the screen. When the figure stepped out of the closet and looked up. I knew. Somehow he knew exactly where I was. And that thought never leaves me. Not even with all the doors locked and cameras on. Because even with all that, he got in. I should have said no. That's what keeps echoing in my head every time I think about that night. It happened about 8 months ago, during early spring. My name's Rhea. I'm 24, still living with my parents while trying to wrap up my last semester of college. I study communications, but I've always had this anxious habit of overthinking everything, which is ironic, considering I didn't think twice before saying yes to watching someone else's house. The job offer came from Maureen, my mom's co-worker at the insurance agency. She was planning a one-night trip to Asheville with her husband and kids and needed someone to feed their pets and keep an eye on the place overnight. It sounded simple enough. She offered me 3,000 rupees just to hang around, feed their 2 cats, refill the parakeet's food tray, and keep the TV on to make it look like someone was home. That was it. Plus, I'd been to their house a few times when I was younger. It wasn't far from our own, just on the outskirts of Jaspetown, in one of those suburban corners where all the houses look the same. Red brick fronts, two-car driveways, white picket fences, PVC gates, and neat little flower beds. I figured, sure, why not? My mom dropped me off because my car was in the shop for brake pad replacement. We pulled into the driveway, and Maureen was already walking out with her husband and 2 daughters. She gave me a brief rundown before handing over the house keys. The cat food's in the pantry, bird feed's next to the cage. Don't worry, the birds sleep through the night. Keep the sunroom light on if you can. It gives off a nice glow from the road. She paused before saying this part. And make sure the side gate stays shut. It's got a latch on top that gets loose sometimes. Just don't leave it open too long, or it'll slam. Her husband, Derek, gave a quick smile. You'll be fine. Nothing ever happens out here. That phrase should have warned me. They left in their silver Fortuner around 3:45 p.m., and I stood at the doorway with a bag of snacks, a power bank, and a tote filled with notebooks and my tablet. The cats, Lilo and Mishka, were lounging on the stairs like little royalty. The birds, just 2 green parakeets, sat in their cage by the kitchen window, chirping aimlessly. By 6 p.m., I'd already gone through half a bag of trail mix and was scrolling Instagram on the couch in the sunroom. It was a small enclosed space with windows on 3 sides and a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. A short 2-step platform led down into the room from the hallway. It was cozy, warm, a little isolated from the rest of the house, which I liked. I didn't even feel weird about being alone until it got dark. I turned off the TV and pulled a blanket up over my shoulders. I wasn't quite asleep yet, just drifting. The house was dead silent, aside from the low hum of the refrigerator and occasional chirp from the birds. And then I heard it. Click. Clack. It wasn't inside the house. No footsteps, no doors creaking. Just a sound that was faint but distinct, like a PVC gate swinging shut. I sat up. My first thought was wind. Maureen did say the latch came loose. It was probably nothing. But when you're sitting in a glass-walled room surrounded by dark windows, probably nothing doesn't calm you down much. I waited, listened. Crunch. That wasn't wind. That was a footstep on leaves. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to move, but I slowly twisted my body around on the couch, peering out the window that faced the backyard. There was someone standing there, right against the glass. I didn't scream. I didn't breathe. My eyes met his, and I swear to God I felt time pause. He was in his 30s, maybe. Stubble, a dark jacket, hood up. His face was blank, completely expressionless. Was he trying to look inside, or had he already seen me? I snapped out of my trance and yelled, "Hey, get the fuck out of here!" I stood up and stumbled backward, heart pounding. I expected him to run. He didn't. He calmly walked over to the back door, grabbed the doorknob and tried to open it. It was locked. Thank God. I ran upstairs, skipping 2 steps at a time, grabbing my phone off the kitchen counter as I passed it. I dialed 911 but stopped before pressing call. I hesitated. I don't know why. Maybe it was panic. Maybe I didn't want to blow it out of proportion if it was just a drunk neighbor or someone confused. Instead, I texted Maureen. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I think someone tried to break in. He was looking through the window. He's gone now, I think. Just wanted to let you know." I know, it was dumb. But that's what I did. Then I locked myself in the upstairs guest bedroom, the one with no windows, and sat in the corner with the house phone in one hand and my cell in the other. I didn't sleep, not even for a second. When Maureen and Derek returned, the first thing they noticed was that every tire on their Honda sedan, the one they left in the driveway, had been slashed. 4 deep cuts, 1 on each. We walked around the property together. Nothing was stolen. No windows were broken. No signs of forced entry. Just tires. and the faint outline of muddy boot prints in the grass leading away from the side gate. Derek filed a report with local police, but without a plate number, face, or camera footage, there wasn't much to investigate. Their security camera was, ironically, offline the night it mattered due to a recent Wi-Fi issue they hadn't fixed yet. Maureen later confessed she had a gut feeling about someone, an old neighbor they had a falling out with, someone who might have known they were leaving town. But we don't know. And maybe that's worse than knowing. I didn't take any more house-sitting jobs after that. I started locking my own bedroom door every night, even inside my parents' house. I had dreams about people pressing their faces to windows, whispering through glass. I told some of my friends what happened. A few of them said I should have just called the cops right away. Some laughed nervously, like I was exaggerating. I wasn't. When you see someone looking in at you through glass close enough to fog it up, you don't forget that. You start wondering how long they were standing there before you noticed. And worse, what they were planning if you hadn't. I should have said no. But now I never leave windows uncovered when I sleep, and I never ever sleep in a sunroom. I was 19 when I started house sitting. It wasn't something I planned on doing long term. It just kind of happened. I was a college student majoring in sociology at Fair Lake University, living off campus in a shared apartment with 2 other girls who rarely paid rent on time. Money was always tight, and I was too proud to ask my parents for help. Babysitting had been my side hustle up until that point, but house sitting felt like easy money. No toddlers with sticky fingers, no diapers. Just me, a couch, and someone else's Netflix account for a couple of nights. That semester had been particularly stressful. Between midterms, work, and dealing with a toxic ex, I was desperate for some solitude. So when I saw a printed flyer pinned to the corkboard outside the student lounge that read, "House sitter needed, $200 for weekend, call for details," I didn't hesitate. The number led me to a man who introduced himself as Mark Layton. His voice was calm and professional. He explained that he and his wife, Carla, were heading to a cabin up north for a wedding, and just needed someone to stay in their house in Brookhill, a quiet suburb about 25 minutes from campus. No pets, no chores, just keep an eye on things. It sounded perfect. That Friday, I packed a backpack with a change of clothes, a charger, my laptop, and a hoodie. Mark had texted me the address and told me to arrive around 4 p.m. before they left. The house was beautiful, modern farmhouse style with big windows, white paneling, and a big wraparound porch. The kind of house HGTV addicts drool over. It sat at the end of a cul-de-sac surrounded by trees and silence. Peaceful, but not too isolated. Mark answered the door, wearing jeans and a navy quarter zip. He was maybe in his early 40s, graying at the temples with kind eyes. Carla joined us a moment later, warm, bubbly, and visibly stressed from packing last minute. "We really appreciate this," she said while handing me a folder with emergency numbers, the alarm code, and their neighbor's contact info. "We've had a few break-ins in the area lately, nothing major, but it just makes me feel better having someone here." That should have been my first clue. I nodded, made polite conversation, and tried to seem more confident than I felt. Mark walked me around the house, the kitchen with granite countertops, the den with the fireplace, the guest bedroom I'd be staying in. "We've got security cameras out front and one in the foyer," he mentioned offhandedly. "You don't need to touch anything with the system unless something goes wrong." We stood in the hallway as they prepared to leave. Carla handed me a crisp $100 bill. "Half now, half when we get back Sunday. We'll be back by noon." "No problem," I smiled. "Enjoy your trip." They backed out of the driveway a few minutes later. I stood on the porch, watching their SUV disappear into the trees before finally turning and locking the front door. I made myself comfortable quickly, microwaved one of the frozen dinners Carla said I could help myself to, then curled up on the oversized sectional in the den. The house was dead quiet aside from the occasional creak of wood settling. That kind of silence always gets to you after a while, like the walls are listening. I FaceTimed my roommate Jenna just before 10. "You're seriously getting paid to house sit in that place?" "Damn," she laughed. I'd kill for a break like that. I gave her a tour through the screen, including the guest bedroom upstairs. Girl, if you die in there, I'm not driving all the way to Brook Hill to collect your haunted soul. Noted, I grinned, trying to brush off the eerie feeling that had been building since sunset. We hung up, and I double-checked all the locks, turned on a couple of hallway lights, then got ready for bed. I brought my laptop into the guest room and started a movie I'd seen a dozen times. Comfort noise. But sometime during the second act, I heard something. A faint click, followed by a soft humming sound, like electricity flicking on. It wasn't from the movie. I muted the laptop. Another click. I froze. The sound had come from the closet across the room. A thin strip of light had appeared beneath the door. My skin prickled with cold. I hadn't turned that light on. I was sure of it. I stared for a full minute before sitting up slowly. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. It had to be a wiring issue, a timer, something normal. I stood, crossed the room, and held my breath as I gripped the closet door handle. A pause. Then I yanked it open, empty, just coats, shoes, an ironing board. I exhaled, shaking my head. "You're being ridiculous," I muttered to myself. I turned off the closet light, shut the door, and got back in bed. But I couldn't relax. My eyes kept darting to the closet door. I ended up dozing off with the lamp still on. Morning light did little to ease the tension. I made coffee and tried to distract myself with social media and emails, but something still felt off. Around 11 a.m., I decided to snoop a little, not in a creepy way, just curious. The house had more rooms than I remembered. A locked door near the end of the hallway piqued my interest. I tried the knob. Locked. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. Still, something told me to back off. I retreated downstairs, thinking maybe I was just tired. I'd had nightmares half the night. Vague, terrifying images of someone standing over me, watching. That evening, I brought dinner into the den and tried to relax. Around 9:30, I was startled by a knock on the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I approached quietly and peered through the peephole. Nothing. Nobody. I flipped on the porch light and opened the door a crack. The porch was empty. I shut it again and locked both the handle and the deadbolt. 10 minutes later, a second knock. Same volume, same rhythm. Again, nobody there. I didn't open the door that time. I tried to sleep early, hoping it would all be over soon. I kept the lamp on again. At some point after midnight, I heard it. The click, the same electrical hum, the glow from beneath the closet door. But this time, I didn't move. I kept my eyes closed, pretending I hadn't noticed. My body locked in place, every muscle tense. A minute passed, then two. Then a slow creaking sound. The closet door opening. I clenched my jaw, trying not to scream. The room stayed silent, but I knew someone was there. I could feel the presence, I could hear soft, almost inaudible breathing, and then I felt it. A shift in the mattress behind me. The barest dip. Something was in the bed. I snapped. I rolled violently out of bed, hitting the floor hard. Scrambling, heart pounding, I grabbed my phone and bolted. I didn't even look back. Down the hall. Down the stairs. I flung open the front door and sprinted barefoot into the yard. I didn't stop running until I reached the street. I called Mark from my car, shaking, near tears. I told him everything about the closet, the noises, the person in the room. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "It's probably best if you don't come back. I'll wire you the rest of the payment." He hung up before I could ask anything else. I blocked his number. I didn't want the money. I just wanted to forget. But I couldn't. Because a few weeks later, I was scrolling through local news when I saw a headline that made my stomach drop. Unidentified man found living in attic of Brook Hill home. It was the Laytons' house. Apparently, Mark and Carla had returned home to strange noises. Things moved around, food missing. They called the police. Officers searched the house and found a man living in a narrow crawl space behind that locked upstairs door, one I never got into. He had been there for months. They found bedding, food wrappers, and journals filled with pages about watching the girl who stayed over. That girl was me. I don't house sit anymore. I used to house sit during college to make some extra cash. It wasn't glamorous or anything, but it paid better than most part-time jobs, and I liked the quiet. I was majoring in environmental sciences and always had papers to write or chapters to read, so a quiet, unfamiliar house to myself was ideal. No distractions, no roommates, just me and a paycheck at the end of it. That's how I ended up house-sitting for the Marsons. I didn't know them personally. This was one of those gigs I got through a professor who knew someone who needed someone. Mr. and Mrs. Marson were a middle-aged couple, both biology professors at a small private university about an hour away from my school. They were going away to a research conference in Oregon for 5 days and needed someone to take care of their 2 dogs and water the plants. That was it. The house, they told me, was in a town called Elder Pine, tiny, quiet, and tucked deep in the woods of upstate New York. I remember thinking the name sounded like it came out of a Halloween book. I drove up there on a Thursday afternoon. It was late October, that awkward part of fall where the trees were still colorful but most of the leaves had fallen, and the daylight didn't stick around for long. It took me a while to even find the place. Their home wasn't visible from the main road, just a long gravel driveway that disappeared into the trees, winding like a snake into the forest. There was a small wooden sign at the entrance that simply said, Marsons, almost as if they were warning you not to come any closer. I pulled up slowly, tires crunching over loose gravel, and the trees swallowed the sky as I drove deeper. Eventually the house came into view, a beautiful 2-story log cabin, rustic but modern. It had huge windows, a wraparound porch, and one of those tall living rooms with the triangular wooden ceiling that felt like a mountain lodge. When I met the Marsons, they were nice enough, polite, educated, formal, the kind of people who still call someone your age, Miss. They showed me around the house. The kitchen was modern, the dogs, Rudy and Beans, were friendly, and the upstairs had just 3 rooms, their bedroom, a guest bathroom, and what they called the office/storage room. I peeked inside that one briefly, just boxes, old books, and a rocking chair by the window. Nothing weird, nothing spooky, just an older couple's quiet house in the woods. Before they left, Mrs. Marson said something that stuck with me, though at the time I didn't think much of it. If the dogs get anxious at night, don't worry. They just don't like being alone. Then they left. The first day passed uneventfully. I unpacked, fed the dogs, watered the hanging plants in the kitchen and living room, and then spent the rest of the evening catching up on readings. I stayed downstairs on the big leather couch with Rudy curled up at my feet and Beans snoring softly in the armchair. It was peaceful. Until 11 p.m., I remember the exact time because I glanced at the microwave clock just before it started, the unmistakable sound of thudding from upstairs. At first, I thought it was an animal, squirrels in the ceiling maybe. The house was surrounded by trees after all. But then I noticed Rudy and Beans. They were frozen, ears perked, and staring at the ceiling. Then Beans started whining and running in small circles. Rudy followed suit. It was chaos in the living room for about 30 seconds, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The thudding ended. The dogs calmed down. And I figured maybe they were just unsettled being alone, like Mrs. Marson said. Still, I was a little shaken, so I locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, and left a light on in the hallway upstairs just in case I had to go up there. But I didn't. I stayed on the couch. The next morning I got up, fed the dogs, and decided to walk around the property. There was a small path behind the house that led through the woods and looped back around to the porch. It was beautiful. Sunlight cutting through the trees, birds overhead, the kind of place people dream of retiring in. When I got back, I decided to go upstairs, just to make sure everything looked fine, that maybe something fell or made the noise the night before. The upstairs hallway was narrow and carpeted. Their bedroom was neat, bed made military style. The master bathroom was spotless. The last door was the office/storage room. I opened it slowly, and the smell hit me first. That slightly stale scent of an old room kept closed too long. The boxes were still there. Books, an old lamp, the rocking chair. But now I noticed something else. A child's drawing pinned to the far wall. It was a stick figure drawing of what looked like a little boy and two large dogs. The boy had BENNY written above his head in crayon. I frowned. They hadn't mentioned a child. That night I got a text from Mrs. Marson checking in. "Hope all is well with the pups. Let us know if you need anything." I replied casually. "Everything's good so far. Rudy and Beans are sweet. Quick question, didn't realize you had a kid? Saw a drawing upstairs?" The response took longer than expected. Finally, "We don't, not anymore. Benny passed away in May. Car accident." My stomach dropped. I typed and retyped several different responses before settling on a simple, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up. Everything's fine here." There was no reply after that. That night, 11 p.m. came like a countdown. I sat on the couch with the dogs again, both curled up beside me, my laptop open but unread. Then it started. Thud, 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 louder this time, like footsteps. Then a dragging sound, something heavy moving across the floor above. Both dogs whimpered and huddled close. Then, crash, a bang, like something large fell over. I stood up. My body moved before my mind caught up. I crept to the base of the stairs, the wooden steps creaking under the pressure of each careful step. The upstairs hallway was lit, but empty. I stepped into the office room again, feeling my chest tighten. The rocking chair was moving, just slightly. A soft creak with each gentle back and forth motion. And then I saw it, for only a second. Something above me. In the rafters of the vaulted ceiling of the hallway, high up, barely visible from the angle. Something pale and wispy, shaped like a person, curled as if watching. I blinked. It was gone. The next day, I didn't do much. I stayed close to the dogs. I tried to write an email for class and gave up after typing and deleting the same sentence 5 times. I was tired. My body felt heavy, and the silence of the house was unbearable. I debated calling the Marsons, but what would I say? Your dead son's ghost might still be here. Even thinking it made me feel crazy. That evening, around 6 p.m., I decided to sit by the pool behind the house. The air was cold, but the water was heated, and I needed to do something to stop thinking. The pool was surrounded by forest on all sides, tall pines and dense brush. I swam a few laps just to clear my head, and then I stopped, catching the edge of the pool with my hands, panting softly. That's when I saw them. 2 wet handprints on either side of mine. Larger than mine, not smudged, perfectly placed, as if someone else had just pulled themselves up right next to me. I scrambled out of the pool, not even bothering with a towel, and ran inside. That last night I didn't try to rationalize. I knew the noises would come. I curled up on the couch under a blanket, both dogs at my feet. I turned the volume of the TV up just loud enough to drown out the house. But it didn't matter. At 11 p.m. the sound cut through the walls again. A soft thud at first, then a dragging sound, then a voice. Small, distant. "Mom?" My blood ran cold. Beans stood up and stared toward the stairs, tail between her legs. Then came a knock. 3 knocks, not on the front door, on the inside of the house, from upstairs. I pressed my face into the couch and didn't move until I saw the first light of morning through the windows. The Marsons came home that afternoon. They asked how everything went. I told them it was fine. The dogs were great. No trouble at all. They thanked me, handed me an envelope, and that was that. As I was leaving, Mrs. Marson walked me to the porch. "Thank you for taking care of our babies," she said, meaning the dogs. And then she added, almost as an afterthought, I hope Benny wasn't too much trouble. She didn't smile. I didn't ask. I just said, he wasn't, and got in my car. I never took another house-sitting job again. I didn't want to do it. Not because I was scared or lazy, but because I'd been exhausted that week. I was behind on school assignments, and my sleep schedule was completely out of whack. But when Valerie called and asked if I could house sit while she and Derek went on a last-minute anniversary trip, I said yes. They were good neighbors, quiet, friendly, and had helped me out before. It felt rude to say no. Their house sat just one street over from mine, a little more tucked into the woods than most homes in our neighborhood near Asheville. Nothing creepy, just a lot of trees and privacy. Valerie even joked about it. It's like living in a peaceful little forest retreat, until a bear shows up and raids the garbage. They were going to Charleston for 6 nights. My job was simple: take in the mail, water Valerie's plants, and most importantly, take care of Copper, their massive, sweet, mixed-breed dog who looked like a cross between a golden retriever and a sofa. This wasn't my first time watching their house. I'd done it twice before. It always went the same way. Copper would shadow me everywhere, sleep by the door, and occasionally stare at the stairs like he was trying to communicate something, which I always chalked up to dog weirdness. So when I packed up my overnight bag on Wednesday afternoon and headed over, I had zero concern in my heart. Backstory, Day 1, Wednesday afternoon. It was still light out when I got to their place. The sun filtered through the trees like something out of a Windows desktop background. Valerie had left me a neatly written note on the kitchen island, along with an emergency contact sheet and a spare key to the shed. "Don't forget to jiggle the handle on the downstairs toilet if it runs," she'd written with a smiley face. Copper greeted me with his usual tail-thumping excitement and immediate request for a walk. After I took him around the block, I settled in, ate some leftovers from the fridge, did a little homework, watched an episode of The Fall of the House of Usher on their massive TV. That first night was calm, not silent. Between wind brushing the trees and the occasional creak of the floors, it was the usual soundtrack of an older home, but nothing unusual. Copper slept at the foot of the couch while I dozed off halfway through another show. I woke up around 1:30 a.m. and moved to the guest room upstairs. It was cooler there, and I left the bedroom window slightly cracked for air. Day 2, Thursday morning. I woke up to the sound of birds and Copper licking my face. I followed the usual routine: feed him, water the ferns in the living room, and toss the ball in the backyard. I checked the mail, just a credit card offer and a small Amazon box Valerie had mentioned. Nothing about the day was off. In fact, it was weirdly peaceful. I spent the afternoon reading and writing, even brought my laptop outside to work on a paper with Copper lying beside me in the grass. But something shifted that evening. Thursday night, the shift. It started small. Around 10 p.m., I heard what sounded like someone walking upstairs. Slow, steady creaks, just 2 or 3 steps. At first, I thought it was Copper, but when I turned, he was curled up by the kitchen. I paused the show I was watching and listened. Silence. I told myself it was the house settling. Valerie mentioned once that their AC ductwork sometimes caused odd noises. Still, I got up and checked. No one upstairs, nothing out of place. I went to bed a little more on edge than the night before. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. because Copper was whining at the bedroom door. Not barking, whining, soft, and almost questioning. I sat up. "What's up, buddy?" He looked at the door, then back at me. I got up, opened the door, and Copper trotted downstairs ahead of me. I followed, barefoot, slightly annoyed. Maybe he needed to go out. But when I got downstairs and reached for the back door to let him out, I noticed the sliding glass door was unlocked. I know for a fact I had locked it. Chills crept down my arms as I slowly slid it shut and locked it again. Copper just sat near the couch, ears perked, but not growling. Still, alert. I checked the windows. Everything else seemed okay. I went back upstairs and locked the bedroom door. Friday, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking I heard things. Whispery clicks, faint rustles. Could have been trees. Could have been the fridge. Could have been my overactive imagination. By Friday evening, I told myself I was being ridiculous. I ran errands during the day and stayed out late to avoid being alone in that house for too long. I even debated sleeping at my own house and coming back early in the morning. But I didn't want to leave Copper overnight. So I made some tea, lit one of Valerie's lavender candles, and tried to trick myself into feeling safe. Friday night, the break, I went to bed around midnight, locked every door and window, double-checked the back slider. Copper was asleep before I even turned out the light. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up suddenly. Not to a sound, not to a nightmare, just awake. You know that awful feeling when you sense someone's in the room with you? That. I sat up slowly. The room was dark except for the dim nightlight Valerie kept in the hall. Copper was standing at the edge of the bed, staring at the door. Ears up, tense. He let out a low growl. I held my breath and listened. Then I heard it. A dragging sound, like something sliding across wood, coming from downstairs. I froze. My body went cold. I reached for my phone and checked the time, 3:14 a.m. I texted my brother 2 words. "You up?" No reply. I opened the bedroom door just a crack. Listened again. Tick. Still there. Definitely something being dragged. I thought about calling 911, but what if it was just the house? Or a raccoon got inside? I didn't want to look stupid. I crept downstairs. Each step felt like thunder under my feet. Copper stayed close behind me, eerily silent. I reached the bottom and saw it. The coffee table in the living room had been moved. Not by much, but enough to know it hadn't slid on its own. And then, I noticed the living room window was open. Just barely. But open. I know I locked it. Heart pounding, I stepped toward it, when I heard a voice behind me. "You should have left that window open." I screamed and stumbled backward, crashing into the coffee table. A man stood near the entry to the kitchen. He was tall, built, wearing dark clothes. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I saw his outline. He didn't move. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, "but you need to open the front door, then go upstairs. Don't look at me again." My throat felt like it was closing. I couldn't even think. I did what he said. I unlocked the door and opened it. As soon as it clicked open, I ran, not upstairs, but out the back door, barefoot into the trees, phone in hand. I called 911 while hiding behind a tree near the property line. It felt like forever before I saw the flashing lights bounce between the trunks. I flagged them down. They cleared the house. The man was gone. They said there was no sign of forced entry, just the window. I hadn't imagined him. They believed me, but they also had nothing to go on. No fingerprints, no face, no security footage. Valerie and Derek didn't have a camera system. They brought in dogs the next morning. Nothing. Valerie and Derek got home Sunday night. Nothing was stolen. Not even the electronics. They were horrified, grateful I was okay. Offered to pay for therapy even. We never figured out who he was, or how long he'd been inside. But I know this. He wasn't there to rob the place. He wanted something else. Or worse, he wanted nothing at all. Just to be there. And I'll never house sit again. I had no idea what I was getting into when I agreed to house sit for Mr. and Mrs. Langford. They were a quiet, older couple who lived a few blocks down from me in a peaceful cul-de-sac on the edge of town in Mason Creek, Oregon. I'd spoken with them a few times, mostly polite hellos while passing by, but we weren't close. Still, when they asked if I'd be willing to house sit while they vacationed in British Columbia for a week, I figured it was easy money. They needed someone to take care of their dog, water the plants, and make sure nothing burned down. Pretty standard stuff. I was 22, in between jobs, and living with my older sister at the time. It was summer, boring, slow, long days that blended into each other, so I said yes, thinking it would give me a little space and a chance to read, binge-watch Netflix, and sleep in a nice, quiet house with central air. When I came over to get the house key, Mrs. Langford walked me through the house, showing me where the emergency flashlight was, where Max's leash and food were stored, Max being their 10-year-old golden retriever, and what plants needed watering. The house was tidy, a bit old-fashioned, with creaky floorboards and heavy curtains. The landline phone was mounted in the kitchen. I remember that clearly because she paused beside it and said, "We don't really use it, but it's there just in case. Cell service can be spotty at times." That detail should have meant nothing. Should have. I moved in that afternoon around 4 p.m. with a duffel bag of clothes, my laptop, and a few snacks. Max took a minute to warm up to me, but by the time I fed him and tossed his favorite toy, we were fast friends. The Langfords had a cozy guest room that smelled like lavender. I curled up there after a late-night movie and some chips. At around midnight, just as I was dozing off, the house phone rang. That sharp, shrill ring. I sat up, startled. I wasn't expecting any calls. I checked my phone, no texts, no missed calls. After a few seconds, the phone stopped ringing. No voicemail. I figured maybe it was a wrong number or robocall. Nothing to worry about. That morning was uneventful. I watered the houseplants, let Max out, read on the back porch. I even video called my sister to show off how comfy the house was. That night, the phone rang again, 12:03 a.m. I was still awake, watching a documentary in the living room. This time I answered. "Hello?" I said. No response. There was no dial tone either. Just faint static. Then a low whisper, like someone was talking but too far from the receiver. I couldn't make out the words. Then, click. Line went dead. I checked the caller ID. Unknown number. It unnerved me a little, but I rationalized. Maybe a crossed wire, some weird landline glitch. The Langfords had mentioned their service could be spotty. Still, I locked all the doors that night and slept with a lamp on. I called the Langfords in the afternoon to casually check in and ask if they ever had issues with prank calls. Mrs. Langford chuckled and said no, never. "Probably just a telemarketer," she said. "They still try calling landlines." That night, I was brushing my teeth around 11:50 when I heard Max growl in the hallway. His ears were up, tail stiff. He was staring toward the front door like someone was there. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth. The phone rang. Midnight. Max barked once, loud and sharp. I rushed to the kitchen, yanked the phone off the receiver. "Hello?" Nothing. Then, breathing. Not just quiet breathing, but close, raspy, shallow. And then a voice, clear, low, deliberate. "Why are you still here?" I slammed the phone down, heart pounding. Max barked again and wouldn't stop for nearly 5 minutes. I checked every lock, every window, even the backyard. Nothing. No sign of anyone. I hardly slept. I stayed out of the house most of the day. Took Max with me to the park, walked him through downtown, sat at a cafe with my laptop. I just didn't want to be inside. Something about the house was starting to feel off. Not haunted exactly, but watched. That night I left the TV on in the living room and all the lights on. I was determined to stay awake past midnight, 12:01 a.m. The phone rang. I stood there for a few rings, then answered. "Listen, I don't know who this is," I started. "You're not alone." The voice was my own, my voice. It was like a playback, a recording of me saying that. I don't remember ever saying those words aloud. My knees buckled slightly as I gripped the kitchen counter. "Who is this?" I demanded. No answer. Then, beep. Line disconnected. Max was whining by the back door. Not barking this time, but clearly uncomfortable. I opened the back door and looked outside with a flashlight. Nothing. But I noticed something chilling. The porch mat was soaked. Not damp from dew or sprinkler water. Soaked, like someone with wet shoes had been standing there. No rain that day. The backyard was bone dry. I started documenting everything. Voice memos, notes in my phone, timestamps. I was losing sleep and losing my mind. I even unplugged the house phone, but it still rang. Still rang. At 12:02 a.m., the unplugged phone, cord dangling beside it, rang like nothing had changed. This time I didn't answer. I just sat on the stairs, watching it ring until it stopped. Then a voicemail popped up. I didn't listen to it right away. I waited until morning. When I did, my stomach twisted into knots. The voicemail was a loop of me breathing in my sleep. Light snores, shifting covers, Max barking once in the background. Then a second voice, male, whispering something I couldn't understand. Until the very end. You lock the doors. But I'm already inside. I confronted the Langfords again over the phone. Mr. Langford answered this time. I asked him bluntly if they had any prank history, hidden cameras, or anything I should know. He sounded confused, genuinely surprised. Nothing like that, he said. You're scaring me a little. I told him I'd be sleeping elsewhere the final night. I couldn't do it. He was understanding. I took Max to my sister's house. She let me crash on the couch. I didn't explain everything. Just said something weird was going on and I didn't feel safe. That night, I turned my cell phone off. I didn't want to know if the house phone would ring again. In the morning, I returned with my sister to grab the rest of my stuff. Max's leash, my duffel bag, laptop charger. I kept the keys in my hand the whole time, itching to get out. As we were leaving, the landline rang. Even though I'd unplugged it again, my sister looked at me confused. Didn't you say it's disconnected? I did, I muttered. She walked over to it, picked it up. I yelled, don't. Too late. She froze, her eyes widening. Then she dropped the receiver. What? I said, rushing over. She shook her head, pale. It was your voice. You were saying something like, chanting it. I didn't ask what it was. I didn't want to know. I handed the keys back to the Langfords that afternoon, thanked them, and said I hoped they had a good trip. Mrs. Langford said she'd have the phone company take a look, though she laughed a bit about the haunted phone line. I moved on. Got a new job. Eventually moved out of my sister's place. But sometimes, late at night, when it's quiet, I still hear that ring in my head. Sometimes my phone will buzz with an unknown number at 12:01 a.m., and I won't answer. I don't care if it's a wrong number or a prank, because if I hear my own voice on the other end again, I might finally believe the last thing that voicemail ever said, you lock the doors, but I'm already inside. I was 27 when it happened, and I remember that summer vividly, not because of sunshine or vacations, but because of what I went through while house-sitting for my cousin Tanya. She and her husband Derek had recently moved into a freshly built suburban home on the outskirts of a quiet town called Pine Hill Creek, just outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Tanya had always been close to me, more like an older sister than a cousin, and when she asked if I could stay at her place while they went on a 2-week trip to Italy, I didn't hesitate. My apartment in the city was small, noisy, and stifling during the hotter months. Her house, on the other hand, was peaceful, modern, and backed up to a wooded area. She needed someone to water her plants, keep an eye on the mail, and watch their little pug named Miso. That was it. Easy enough. Or so I thought. The first few days were perfect. I spent my mornings drinking coffee out on the back porch while Miso ran around the yard, and my evenings curled up on their sectional couch watching crime documentaries. Tanya had stocked the fridge before leaving, and I found myself enjoying the quiet more than I'd expected. I even met a couple of the neighbors. A woman named Jean from across the street waved at me on the second day while watering her lawn. She was older, maybe in her late 60s, with silver hair and a tired smile. She didn't come over or introduce herself, and honestly, I was fine with that. Another neighbor, Paul, lived in the house directly to the right. He was around Tanya and Derek's age, mid-30s, tall, with thinning hair and glasses. He came over on the third evening with a half wave and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, you must be the cousin," he said, standing a little too close to the porch steps. "Yeah, I'm Ava," I replied. "Just here for a couple of weeks while Tanya and Derek are away." Right. Italy, huh? Must be nice. If you need anything, I'm right next door." He looked at me for a second longer than necessary, and then walked away. I wasn't sure why, but something about him made me feel watched. Still, I shrugged it off. It was almost midnight when I heard the first knock. Software deliberate, not frantic, just strange. Miso growled from the foot of the couch, his little head tilted. I muted the TV and stood up, padding barefoot across the floor to the front door. I flicked on the porch light and peered through the peephole. No one. I waited a beat, then unlocked the door and opened it a few inches. The porch was empty. The street outside looked dead, every house cloaked in sleep. I closed the door slowly, locked it again, and chalked it up to maybe hearing things. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Maybe I wasn't used to that kind of silence. But 2 minutes later, it came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time, faster, more urgent. I froze. "Hello?" I called out through the door. Nothing. I opened the door a crack again. Still nothing. The porch was empty, but this time, I stepped outside and looked around. The street was deserted. A single street lamp down the road flickered, casting long, strange shadows. Feeling unsettled, I went back inside and locked everything. Deadbolt, chain, even wedged a chair under the doorknob. Miso whined quietly, sensing something was off. I told myself it was probably kids messing around. A stupid prank. I didn't want to blow it out of proportion. But the next morning there was a knock at the door again, this time in broad daylight. It was Jean. She stood there in a floral apron holding a foil-covered plate. "I made lemon bars," she said, smiling. "Thought I'd bring you a few." I thanked her and invited her in for a moment, though I was hesitant. She seemed kind, but also off. Her questions came quickly and with a peculiar intensity. "So, they're gone for 2 weeks? You're here all by yourself? You don't have a boyfriend staying over or anything, do you?" I tried to be polite, but the conversation felt more like an interrogation. After a few awkward minutes, she left, and I immediately locked the door behind her. That evening, I saw Paul standing on his porch. Just standing, facing the house, not doing anything. No phone, no drink, just watching. I lowered the blinds. Around 2:30 a.m., I was jolted awake by Miso barking. I jumped out of bed and grabbed my phone, heart racing. I listened. There it was again, scratching. A slow, dragging sound across the front door. Not like claws, not an animal. Fingernails. I crept to the hallway and peeked around the corner. The porch light was on. A shadow moved just outside the frosted glass window beside the door. I didn't dare speak. Miso barked again and I grabbed him, holding his mouth shut. The scratching continued for a few more seconds, then stopped. I didn't sleep after that. The next day I went out for coffee just to get away from the house. I stayed out until late afternoon and came back feeling a little better. But as I walked up to the door, I noticed it was open. Just slightly ajar. I froze. "No way," I whispered. I knew I'd locked it. I always did. And the chain had been on too. I pushed the door open carefully, holding my breath. The house was still, quiet. Nothing looked out of place in the living room. But when I got to the guest bedroom, my bedroom, I found my suitcase dumped out. Clothes everywhere. My underwear drawer in Tanya's dresser had been opened. My journal lay on the floor, its cover bent. Nothing stolen, just disturbed, violated. I ran outside and sat in my car, shaking. I called Tanya. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't stay here. Something's wrong with your neighbors." She was confused. I told her everything. The knocks, the scratching, the staring, the door. And then she said something that turned my blood cold. Both Jean and Paul have spare keys to the house. We gave them one in case of emergencies. But they're trustworthy. I swear I almost laughed. Trustworthy? Tanya, someone was in here. I planned to leave the next morning. I packed my things and kept Miso by my side all night. I didn't sleep. I just waited. Around 4 a.m., I heard voices outside the bedroom window. I crouched down and peeled back the curtain just enough to see Paul and Jean, standing in the yard, talking, whispering. Every few seconds, they both looked toward the house. Jean was holding something in her hand, a key. I could see it glint under the porch light. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I told the dispatcher everything. Break-in, strange neighbors, unwanted entry. They promised someone would be there in minutes. And sure enough, when the cruiser pulled up, both of them scattered back into their houses like roaches. I met the officer at the door, wide-eyed, exhausted. I think they've been coming into the house while I'm asleep, I told him. They have keys. I don't know what they want, but I'm done. I left that morning with Miso and went to stay with a friend in Asheville until Tanya got back. She believed me, but it was hard for her to accept. She'd never seen anything but polite small talk from her neighbors. But a few weeks later, Tanya called me. Ava, something happened. I found hidden cameras in the guest bedroom and in the bathroom. My heart dropped. Cameras? Yeah. Derek and I reported it to the police. They're investigating. I never found out what became of it. But I know in my bones, Paul or Jean, or maybe both of them, had been watching me, studying me. And I still remember the look in Paul's eyes that first day. Like he already knew what room I was sleeping in. Like he was waiting. To this day, I won't house sit for anyone. Not even family. Because sometimes it's not strangers you need to be afraid of. It's the ones who smile and wave from just across the street. I wasn't even supposed to be house-sitting that weekend. It started with a favor. My coworker, Kelsey, had a family emergency. Her mom had been admitted to the hospital 2 states over, and she needed someone to watch her place in Willow Ridge. That was a small rural area about 45 minutes from where I lived in Ridgeview, a small city in western Oregon. I'd only been to her house once for a barbecue last fall, but I remembered it being massive, like one of those old countryside estates you see in Hallmark movies. Huge lawn, wraparound porch, trees everywhere. "Come on, Aaron," she said, half laughing but mostly begging over the phone. "It's only for 4 days. You just feed the cats, bring in the mail, and make sure nothing burns down. I'll owe you for life." I hesitated. "I've got work though, and that's a drive. You can come after work each day, or sleep there. It's honestly really peaceful. You'll love it." I gave in. At the time, I figured I could use the quiet. I had been going through some personal stuff. I'd broken up with my boyfriend about 3 months earlier, and though I was doing better, my apartment always felt a little too quiet at night. Plus, I worked remotely for a nonprofit that didn't require much office time, just a laptop and decent Wi-Fi. When I got to Kelsey's house that first afternoon, I remember thinking how big it felt now that I was alone in it. It had that kind of heavy silence you only find in large, older homes. A bit of creaking wood, a soft hum from the refrigerator, the occasional clang of air ducts settling. She had told me there were 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and I had no intention of exploring any more than I needed to. The first night was uneventful. I brought my things in, just a backpack, my laptop, chargers, and some clothes. Kelsey had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Hey Aaron, thanks again. Cats. Food in the pantry. Scoop their litter once daily. Mail. Grab it from the black box by the gate. Wi-Fi info below. Don't mind the creaky floors upstairs. The house is old but solid. You'll be fine. K." It was sweet. I made myself a grilled cheese, watched a little TV on her massive 65-inch screen, and eventually dozed off on the giant sectional in the living room. The cats, Gus and Mimi, slept nearby, curled up into donuts on opposite ends of the couch. I remember waking up once around 3:40 a.m. to what sounded like a soft clunk from upstairs, but I figured it was a pipe or the cats. I went back to sleep without checking. I worked from her dining room table the next morning. Around 9 a.m. I walked out to get the mail. The long gravel driveway crunched under my boots, and I glanced back at the house halfway there. I don't know why. It was that instinctual glance you do when something feels just a little off. But nothing was. I shrugged it off, grabbed the mail, and walked back. The second night, after dinner and a shower, I was reading on the couch when I heard it again. That sound from the night before. A single thump, then a faint dragging noise. It was so light, like something being slid across carpet. The cats were both in the room with me, asleep. I muted the TV. Silence. I stood up and walked slowly to the bottom of the staircase. "Hello?" I called up. Nothing. I didn't go up. I told myself it was probably some old ductwork or a closet door not latched properly, but I slept with the hallway light on that night. Not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to stub my toe if I had to get up, or so I told myself. I had to head into the office that morning for a weekly team meeting. I was gone from 8 a.m. to about 5:30 p.m. When I got back to the house, something felt different. The front porch light was on. I was 90% sure I hadn't turned that on. When I went inside, one of the kitchen chairs looked slightly pulled out from the table. Not a lot, just a few inches. Enough to make me pause. And then I noticed the TV in the living room was on, set to a local news channel with the volume down to barely a whisper. I hadn't turned it on that morning. I stood there in the entryway for a solid minute, trying to talk myself down. I hadn't slept well. Maybe I did turn the porch light on. Maybe I bumped the chair when I left. Maybe I sat down to tie my shoe and forgot. Maybe I hit the remote by accident. I turned everything off, locked the doors, again, and tried to shake the unease. That night the sounds upstairs came back, but louder. And this time, they didn't stop right away. There was a definite sequence: thump, drag, pause, thump, drag, pause. I sat up, holding my phone like it was a weapon. I didn't go up. I told myself I'd check in the morning, in daylight. By now I was tired. Not physically, just mentally fogged. Every corner felt like it had weight behind it. I didn't want to be paranoid, but something was wrong. I could feel it. A subtle wrongness. Like a misplaced object you can't name but know doesn't belong. After feeding the cats and scarfing down toast, I decided to do a full walkthrough of the house, just to put my mind at ease. I checked the front rooms, the kitchen, the laundry room. Nothing. Then I went upstairs. There were 2 main bedrooms and a smaller guest room tucked at the far end of the hall. I hadn't even opened that door since I got there. The guest room had no windows. It was used mostly for storage, boxes, an unused futon, old furniture covered in white sheets. When I opened the door, I didn't register what I was seeing at first. A man, sitting, on the floor, cross-legged, completely naked. He didn't move, didn't flinch. His skin was pale and dirty, his beard patchy, hair greasy and stuck to his forehead. His eyes, sunken, hollow, locked onto mine like a camera lens focusing. We stared at each other for maybe 2 full seconds, but it felt endless. My body went rigid. I slammed the door and bolted. I ran down the stairs so fast I almost slipped, grabbed my phone from the counter, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. When the police arrived, they swept the house. They found him crouched in the unfinished part of the basement, naked, still silent. He didn't resist. There was a cellar-style window behind the water heater. It had no screen, and just enough clearance outside for someone skinny to slide through. The dirt prints on the floor confirmed it. They said he might have been living there for days, possibly weeks. There were small piles of food wrappers and water bottles in the basement, tucked behind an old boiler. Kelsey had mentioned that storage room hadn't been cleaned in years. Apparently, he was a drifter, known to local authorities. He hadn't hurt anyone before, but had broken into other homes in the area to sleep in warm places. That's what he told them. I just wanted somewhere quiet to sleep. He hadn't made himself known until I was there. They said my presence probably disrupted his routine. That's why I started hearing noises. He was trying to avoid me, until he couldn't anymore. I stayed at a friend's place the next 2 nights. Kelsey was horrified when she heard, apologetic. She cried on the phone saying she had no idea anyone could have gotten in. Neither did I. But I think about it sometimes, about how I might have shared a house with a stranger for days, about how I watched TV while he sat silently a floor above, about how, if he had wanted to hurt me, he could have. But he didn't. He just watched, waited. I don't house sit anymore, and I never ignore strange sounds in the night.